joining us for the first time today, welcome to our conference. For those who are returning from lunch, we hope you had enough to eat, and we hope you were able to experience the warm Hafa spirit led by Mrs. Rose Munya and her excellent staff who took care of setup outside today. We begin the afternoon portion of our conference with a very special presentation by His Excellency Emmanuel Mori, President of the Federated States of Micronesia. President Mori was elected to his current position by his nation's Congress on May 11, 2007. President Mori first sought elected office when he ran in a special election held on July 1, 1999, and won a seat on the FSM Congress. He successfully won re-election to the FSM Congress 4 more times in 2001, 2003, 2005, and again in 2007. On May 11, 2007, Mori was elected FSM president and took office immediately, vacating his seat in Congress. Emmanuel Mori was born on Christmas Day, December 25, 1948, on the island of Phefen, and graduated from Xavier High School in 1969. He attended our local university, the University of Guam, where he earned a Bachelor of Arts in Business Management in 1973. Following graduation, Mr. Mori was chosen for a management internship at Citicorp Credit Guam. In 1974, he became the assistant manager at the Citicorp branch in Saipan. Mr. Mori left Citicorp in 1976 after accepting the position of assistant administrator of the Trust Territory Social Security Office. In 1979, he became the National Revenue Officer for the state of Chuuk, administering the Tax and Revenue Office. He then joined the FSM Development Bank, serving as the comptroller from 1981 until '83, and subsequently assumed the duties of president and CEO, positions he held until 1997. At that point, he became the executive vice president of the Bank of the FSM, a position he held from 1997 until his 1999 election to Congress. President Mori is married to the former Emma Nelson. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming President Emmanuel Mori.
Folks from the 3 branches of the government of Guam, private sectors, students who helped out today, and the wonderful people from the University of Guam and the Community College of Guam, Neri Okada, and everyone who is involved in making this conference a success. Please allow me at the outset to extend my personal compliments and greetings and from the leadership and the people of the FSM to our good friends here in Guam. Aitiro me fairo laparap mi piti menir masufan wabi berisin ranani ben habatai. I want to thank the 30th Guam Legislature for sponsoring this conference. In particular, I would like to offer my appreciation to Senator Cutretz and Senator Espicio for inviting me to participate in this conference. Your personal efforts in making this gathering possible to address these critical issues of our Micronesian region are very much appreciated. It is always a pleasure to visit Guam, not only where Guam days begin, but as a hub for our Micronesian region. As a hub, Guam continues to play an important role in the development of our region, of which I take this opportunity to thank the people of Guam for being a gracious host to many of our FSM citizens. These are extraordinary and challenging times. Our Micronesian region is experiencing a rapid growth, urbanization, and migration, and is increasingly commanding attention in respect to issues of national and international security. It is therefore essential and critical that we, as a region, unite and work together in our efforts to maximize the benefits and minimize the burdens of these challenges. I have confidence in our collective efforts to rise to meet these challenges, as we have demonstrated in the past. Today's gathering is a mere reflection of our effective strength and resilience, our commitment to work together as member of a Micronesian family. The recent successful appointment of Tony Babauta as the first Islander Assistant Secretary of the Department of Interior is an example of that unity of purpose, support, and commitment as a region. Congratulations, Secretary Babauta. The FSM takes pride in its special relationship with the United States through its Compact Treaty. The Compact has not only provided much needed assistance for our nation building efforts, but it is also providing opportunities for our young men and women to serve in the U.S. Armed Forces, contributing in our own small ways to the noble cause of promoting peace, freedom, and democracy. The presence of FSM's young men and women in the U.S. Armed Forces exemplifies the true spirit of friendship and partnership as embodied in the Compact Treaty. I am proud to say that my own daughter is serving in the U.S. Air Force based in Okinawa, and as well as the Vice President's son in the Army in Honolulu. In this respect, that we welcome the convening of this conference to address the military buildup here in Guam, given the strategic location of Guam in the Western Central Pacific. Like many of our leaders and people of Micronesia, Guam is my second home away from home. Like some of you today, I graduated from the University of Guam, where I learned many of life's lessons. I made many friends at the university. Two of them came to Chuuk several times. George Chargalaf of Essen and Salvador Avila from Manila. And incidentally, Salvador's mom was a classmate of my mother in the early 1950s when she was here in Guam. She was sponsored, as it was the common arrangements for Micronesian students at that time, by the Aflaqua family of Sinahania, with Carmencita, Anita, and Juanita. And Juanita, as you know, is the mother of Lou Leon Guerrero, Senator Leon Guerrero. Such a personal friendship has sustained us and has enriched us up to this day. We recognize there would be both positive and negative consequences from the buildup. We'll be faced with economic expansion, resulting in work, migration, and increased pressures on our social and cultural integrity. We therefore need to prepare to respond in a proactive manner to ease the burden and take advantage of the benefits of this expansion. In this respect, I commend the efforts of the many working groups and organizations, such as the Civilian Military Task Force, in preparing for the buildup. Much progress has been made by these working groups, and the FSM is prepared to contribute in any way we can in the area of labor, trade, commerce, education, ports and customs, and many others. An important element of the build-up is the critical issue of manpower development before, during, and after the build-up. I am pleased to share with you that our 4 state governments have made such progress in the area of creating alliances with the private sectors and non-governmental organizations here in Guam to provide workers training, social services, coordination, and employment. As part of the strategic development plan for the FSM, it is anticipated that much work will be required for the initial phase of the build-up here in Guam and in the areas of training and recruitment of manpower. For the long term, after the wind down of the build-up, there is a need for realigning our manpower needs and priorities workers, as workers would be returning home and contribute to the infrastructure build-up using the skills that they have gained from the build-up here in Guam. In preparing for the build-up, there are lessons learned and gained from the migration of the FAS citizens on Guam. FAS stands for Freely Associated States. As we continue to address these compact issues, there is merit to understand these issues in their entirety, their burdens and benefits, their implications and impacts on our respective communities. I applaud the efforts by the Navy to undertake an environmental impact statement, and I do hope that a parallel study or analysis of economic and social impacts from the FAS migration be also undertaken. It would appear that most of the time the emphasis is mostly on the expense and liability of our FAS citizens. But we have yet to see a study where it disclose the contribution of our citizens in employment and in taxes and in other areas. And this is what we want to see as a study to complement what the Navy has started. To complement other efforts in addressing issues of our region's chief executives established the Micronesian Center for a Sustainable Future, of which I am honored to be its current Secretary General. It is our hope that this center would be a vehicle by which our respective island governments will ensure that there will be effective, coordinated sustainable development strategies and programs in this region. The center is expected to play a pivotal role as it will add value to other existing governmental and non-governmental regional arrangements. To this end, I want to thank the Guam Legislature for your unanimous support in this very chamber for the establishment through the passage of your resolution number 140, which you passed in April of 2008. Likewise, I also want to thank the APIL for the same support and the vote of confidence in the establishment of the center. And it goes without saying the Micronesian Chief Executives Summit would not have been existed if not for the hard work of Governor Camacho over the past years. All of these efforts and supports are all examples of working together in a Micronesian family. I will be remiss to close my remarks without mentioning an issue that is facing mankind today. The issue is, of course, climate change. In less than a month from today, I will join other world leaders in Copenhagen, where we hope to conclude a legally binding agreement on climate change. I am saying hope because from what I have read in the newspaper, what I've seen on TV, the possibility of the outcome document that will meet our aspiration is still uncertain. But I am still hopeful that would seal the deal in Copenhagen. For this reason, I want to extend my plea to you today, especially those who are involved in the planning and preparing for this build-up. I hope that we do not lose sight of this global issue, as climate change should be prominent and should command our attention in all of our thinking and planning for what our future would be like for you, for your children, and for your children's children. My friends, ladies and gentlemen, in this great hall, decisions can be made that move beyond today's problems and propel us into a brighter future. These decisions must be based on vision, cooperation, information sharing, and most importantly, a real understanding that when we speak with one voice, we create a future that benefits all of our people today and for the future generation to come. God bless the leaders, the dear people of Guam. Thank you, Shishus Mase, Kalangan, Kamkar, Kuro, and Kirisho Chapur.
Sizuz Masi, President Mori, we have a question and answer period. Ushers, would you collect the questions if there are any? Any questions from the audience? You must have given a really good speech, Mr. President. We now move to our second conference panel on natural resources. Oh, thank you, Mr. President. We now move to our second conference panel on natural resources, which will be moderated by Mr. Clifford Guzman from the Glidey Group. Mr. Guzman.
Buenas and half a day. Ufresi hujung undangkul si Zeus masi para toru samsun ni man matu pago na hani sa toru samsun ni man eget gi television. Especialidad y legislatura si senador Rory Respicios and si senador Judy Guthertz. Hafadang, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to offer a big thank you to everyone who is here today, this afternoon, and those of you who are on television, watching it on television. I was doing that myself this morning. And also want to give a big round of thanks to the legislature, the 30th Guam legislature, for their leadership in this, especially, of course, Senator Judy Guthertz and Senator Rory Respicio. And of course, Ben Pangilinan. Senator Ben Pangilinan is also here, is very instrumental in making this a reality. I'm very pleased and very proud to be up here as a moderator this afternoon for natural resources. Our land, our sea, as limited as we think of our land particularly, the air quality of the air, how things are going to happen and what's going to happen. This is not a very easy thing for our island, and there are many people on our island who are a little bit concerned about things, and hopefully today we're going to be able to talk about some of these issues, everything from energy efficiency to our land, how much we have left and what can we do with it and how can we make this work for us. I'm very pleased to have a wonderful set of panelists this afternoon, starting with the administrator of the Guam Environmental Protection Agency, Ms. Laura Lee T. Camacho, Crisostomo Camacho. I have here written Carlos Camacho. Also, Mr. Christopher Duenas, who is the director of the Guam Department of Land Management. We also have Mr. Bernard Watson, who is with the Farmers Cooperative Association of Guam. And finally, we have Ms. Vanji Lujan, who is the administrator for the Guam Coastal Zone Management. Would you please give them a big round of applause? As we did this morning, we're going to give each of our panelists an opportunity to give their thoughts. And we're going to start off this afternoon with a comment on our land, protecting a vital and finite resource. Please welcome Mr. Christopher Duenas, Director of the Guam Department of Land Management.
Thank you and good afternoon. I would like to join the retiring Speaker, Mr. President Manuel Mori, and welcome him once again, and congratulate Senator Respicio and Senator Guthers for this very timely forum, and especially in the title, the military buildup and beyond, and of course, talking about the perspective from our people, as we just had a forum that was more centered around the business opportunities that just took place last year, sponsored by the University of Guam. I'd also like to welcome once again our military partners, especially Major General Bice. And I have to say that this morning I was especially impressed by the presentation given to us by Mr. Roger M. Nishihara, or Natsuhara, and the comments that you made that I think are going to be especially critical to what I'm going to discuss in just a moment, which is the most precious resource that we have on Guam, and that's our land. It has been said many times over and over again on Guam, we don't own the land, we just borrow it from our children. And so as we go forward, and as the tradition many times and for many years on Guam is to pass land down, obviously there's land that we can't pass down, and that's land that's possessed by the military, and that there are intentions for the future of land. And I'd also like to say hello to Senator Ben Pangilinan, who's my oversight chair, and I know this has expressed interest for him. I'm going to go to my remarks, and I'll just be discussing things that were also given to us in terms of panel questions on this topic. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to provide remarks and perspective at this forum as it relates to the Department of Land Management and the military buildup and beyond. Although I have only been the Director of Department of Land Management for over 5 months now, I've been moving aggressively with my team to address the challenges my department faces currently, as well as preparing for the impending workload increase as a result of the military buildup. Let's review some of these initiatives that I've implemented since being the director. The recruitment of at least 10 full-time employee positions to increase the manpower, and the opening of 5 promotional positions to provide stability and staff retention. One of the things that the military buildup has already done to Guam and is going to do to Guam in the future is attract folks to want to work in military jobs, and it may be a drain on the resources of the government of Guam. So I think it's going to be important for all agencies, and especially with an agency that's charged with managing our property and our land, to aggressively recruit so we can get young people in the workforce to replace those who will be retiring possibly and going into other fields and avail themselves of opportunities. So recruitment and retention is important. In that vein, I'd like to thank Ms. Mary Okada from the university, or from the Guam Community College, for opportunities and apprenticeships. Over 50% of the land management staff are now currently enrolled in apprenticeship programs to enhance their skills in computer skills, as well as survey and other job-related opportunities or skills that they need to enhance themselves to be better part of our workforce at land management. We also applied for and received 15 additional positions from AHRD to augment our staff with special emphasis on the records division. As many people know on Guam right now, one of our biggest challenges is timely turnaround time for issuance of title. I'm committed in the last year of this administration as the director there to turn that into one of the most effective parts of our operation, and with this staff augmentation and knowing the military buildup is going to bring a lot of transactions in the future, we have to address this right now, and that's why we're aggressively going after it. The other thing is to fast track our scanning project in the records division, which will allow for that turnaround time. We're doing that right now, and we've got the technology that's coming online to be able to do that shortly. The other one was to purchase and update computer equipment in the records division to allow for better research capabilities for those from the private sector and other entities that come in to do research at the Department of Land Management. When I came on board, that equipment was antiquated 10 years plus in terms of most computer systems. And now we have modern, up-to-date systems, which is really moving that process along a lot quicker in terms of research. We also secured federal funding to update our automation project to include the coming online e-government capability to research cadastral maps and other land issues with regard to land management online and not having to come up to the Department of Land Management to do that. And also to move into the area where we can collect much needed resources for the government of Guam, and that is to have a direct automated linkage to revenue and taxation to ensure timely transfer of funds and capability of revenue and tax to collect these funds, given the fact that once a transaction is done at land management, it's registered over at rev and tax, so the collections will be much faster. Okay, and the other issue that I think is really important in terms of land management and what we've been working on in our planning division is shortly we will be passing on to the legislature one of the largest endeavors with regard to our partners in land management, which is ancestral lands. And that is the finalization of the Puntun dos Amantes project, to Lover's Point, for those who don't understand that, Puntun dos Amantes. Anyways, this is the largest transfer of land from the federal government back to ancestral lands turned over to the original landowners. And in this opportunity that was given, there was a 1-year time frame by which all these families could come in and apply for zoning for this property, which is going to be very critical to this buildup. Many of these lots ended up being zoned as M1 for workforce housing, R1 and R2 for the development of affordable housing down the line, and other tourism opportunities under hotel and other zonings for the development of Guam. This was a tremendous accomplishment, and I'd like to congratulate our staff and the legislature and everybody else who was involved in that, because as we talk about the buildup and the need for workforce housing, this was a key issue to get that started. So that map is done, and it's completed, and it will be transferred to the legislature soon here for their approval. These are the key initiatives, along with others, to prepare Department of Land Management for the years to come in providing for good customer service for the people of Guam, currently, as well as our new Guam family. At this time, I'd like to review mandates, because I know that I will get questions here soon, and I'd like to clear up something. I'll just read this paragraph and then explain it a little bit for those who might not know what happened. As you are all aware, many years ago, the mandates of Department of Land Management changed with the creation of the Chamorro Land Trust Act, or Chamorro Land Trust Commission, and the Guam Ancestral Lands Commission. At present, Department of Land Management only possesses a few small parcels of land, and all other government of Guam land has been turned over to the aforementioned entities. Today, I have asked Chamorro Land Trust Commission, I believe is represented here, as well as Ancestral Lands, to join me in this forum to answer any specific questions you may have regarding government land. I would like to add that Department of Land Management and Chamorro Land Trust Commission and the Guam Ancestral Lands Commission have a great working relationship, and we stand ready to assist in any way we can for the betterment of our people. The reason why I point this out is because many people still believe that the Department of Land Management possesses the land inventory in the government of Guam, which I'm about to show in a moment here, but that is not true. We no longer possess that property, and the clear mandates that exist under Chamorro Land Trust for land for the landless and those programs being administered, and of course ancestral lands, which is the return of land to original landowners, or the highest and best use for properties that cannot be returned because they're more specific to industrial purposes or other purposes for economic benefit, which can turn into compensation to families in the long run. Lastly, I would like to mention that the current mission of Department of Land Management is to facilitate economic growth of Guam by providing accurate records of land ownership, efficient processing of land transactions to include timely issuance of certificate of title, and proper oversight of land use planning and zoning, which is one of our key mandates. Absolute confidence in our ability to function efficiently is vital and of utmost interest to the public. Now, in the preparation for this forum, what was issued to us was a series of questions, or at least topics, to discuss. And so I would just like to go over those points real quick and have a few remarks on them, and then we'll bring up probably one of the biggest points of interest in terms of what land currently exists in the inventory of the government of Guam, what land is currently possessed by the federal government, and what are their potential possible needs for the future. The first subject was managing a finite resource. That is critical to all of us, and as the governor mentioned this morning, that is going to be a community job. And I would like to mention also that the law of the land that currently exists is that any initiatives moving forward in terms of usage of government land under any entity, be it Chamorro Land Trust or whether it be ancestral lands, will end up in this house in the end of the day. And so any negotiations that take place, of which none are ongoing now, I can assure you, when the time comes, as we are now in this EIS process, we have no record of decision. When that time has come, at the end of the day, when we sit down with our military counterparts, then obviously, this House will play a big role in the final decisions that we all collectively make. There was questions of legal mechanisms, and I just don't want to go there because I don't have the legal expertise. I would rather defer those questions to the Attorney General's office and others that would discuss what are the legal mechanisms in the event that there were some efforts to take over land, of which I know, General Bice, there's been discussions of none of that. In fact, I believe there was a forum where it was actually discussed eminent domain would not even be on the table. We would sit down and negotiate these things. So, as I said, I don't think it's important to get into the legal issues now and leave that to the legal minds and, of course, this esteemed body. If we can now just bring up the overlay of the cadastro that currently exists. Okay, this is the inventory. I don't know if we can enlarge that at all. My eyes are really bad. If we can just go to the map first, so that we can see the color-coded presentation representing. Okay, I don't know if you can all see that out there, but this is the most current map that we have, and the shaded areas, of course, the legend is on the bottom. The gray areas being the military. And the interest really is just to discuss military and Gov Guam land, and then the beige areas being the Government of Guam inventory of land. Now, if we go to the next slide. Beyond that, there we go. Now we will see the actual numbers in terms of acreage. And what we have there is the Department of Defense at 40,000 acres currently, and then you have the percentage there. We have the National Park Service with the 695 acres, and the percentage, of course, is extrapolated there. Fish and Wildlife with 385 acres, and the percentage once again. The Government of Guam, 37,673.36, and the percentage. And then the combined acreage, which is the 78,000. This is not to the acre right now. There has been some movement in terms of returns of lands and the like, but this is just a general overview as of 11/18/2009. Well, that would be yesterday, I guess. But and this is what was issued to us. And then private lands coming in at 68,246, and then this is based on this 147,000 in terms of acreage wide, and what the discussion point is. So really, in the panel notes that were given to us, I guess this leads us to the questions that were issued. How much is in the inventory? How much is already being used? And you could see what that answer is there, and how much will be needed. I would say right now, in terms of the discussions that have been ongoing, and after talking to those that have sat in on meetings with the Civilian Military Task Force, that question is still up in the air. I know that in terms of negotiations and in terms of what's taken place, what we can represent is that there have been some surveys that have done, but I think it's important that we talk about what survey is. The surveys, as presented from the Civilian Military Task Force, have been basically walkthroughs. Where is the land? What does it look like? No equipment, no bulldozers, none of that kind of stuff going on. But it's obvious that we have been taking a look at property, and Land Trust Commission, as well as Ancestral Lands, has at least understood that there is a request that is in. And so at this point in time, I would just wrap up my discussion by simply saying, I know this is a very key point of interest for the people of Guam, and as land always is and always will be. But I can assure you, from the perspective of discussing these issues with the governor, as well as the leadership from Land Trust Commission, as well as Ancestral Lands, that highest and best use is always going to be at the top of the list. I have experts here from land management in case there's any specific questions after this presentation, and I thank you for your attention. God bless.
Thank you very much, Chris. Moving on with the land issues, our next topic is impacting local agriculture, challenges and opportunities. Please welcome up Mr. Bernard Watson, the Farmers Cooperative Association of Guam.
Well, buenas tardes, everyone. I also would like to thank the good senators for allowing me to participate in this discussion and maybe point out some of the more important aspects of how the buildup will affect agriculture. Whether the buildup happens or it doesn't happen, then there's really the needs for agriculture are pretty much going to be the same. The buildup will increase demands, but it'll also increase imports. We kind of need to start looking at agriculture maybe from a different perspective. It's generally looked at as an economic issue and a matter of keeping more money on Guam, reducing imports. That's all good stuff. But really, it's a security issue. Right now, today, our community cannot feed itself. We are totally 95% dependent on outside imports. If something happens to either the shipments or the cost of the imported products, we're in trouble. So with that in mind, we really need to work on beefing up our capabilities. Last year when crude oil spiked at $148 a barrel, we got a taste of what happens to the global distribution system of food. And when the prices went up for fuel, that's the linchpin that makes everything go round. If it's global, you gotta have fuel to move it. If it's food, you gotta have fuel to refrigerate it and move it. So fuel's cheap, you can ship it 10,000 miles, it's not a problem. You go to the store and there's real nice looking produce on the shelves coming from all places around the world. Could be said that the prices are too high, maybe so, maybe no, but with the cost of fuel going back up, those prices are going to climb. And we saw food riots in different parts of the world when the fuel costs skyrocketed. It's possible we see that again. So anything we can do to beef up our capabilities is well worth it, including maybe reserving and preserving some of the best agricultural land for that use. Worldwide, you're seeing pretty much the same thing. Communities use the best land for building. That's generally how it works. Starts in one place and it just keeps expanding and eating up all the best lands. So the farmers end up getting the poorer lands to farm on. And it's doable, but the worse the land, the less the returns and the greater the costs. So we really need to look at improving our capabilities. One of the ways that we can do it is by organizing and coordinating the efforts of our local farmers. That's where the Guam Farmers Co-op hopes to come in. We're still in the development stage, and I thank your bio for promoting me to vice president of the co-op, but actually I'm a board member, not the vice president, and Mr. Wustick is the vice president. But especially in the case of the military, it's very difficult for individual farmers to do business with the military. They're structured in such a way where they need everything standardized. Standardized packaging, standardized weights, quality control, everything from enclosed delivery vans. It's all part of the package. Very difficult for an individual farmer to come up with all these resources. So that's also where the co-op can come in and help. By putting our efforts together, we can come up with the volume and all the other resources to make this happen. One of the other effects of the impending buildup is going to be, of course, increased imports. One of the results of increasing imports is going to be an increase of invasive species. It's a mathematical surety that you increase what's coming in, you're going to have more and more introduced invasives. Farmers are often the first ones to have to deal with these new pests. We find them on our crops and we have to deal with them. So really, we need to set it up so that when these invaders come in, we can react quickly. We've seen in the past that quick action is the key to whether we win the battle or lose against any given invasive species. So anything that can be done to set up a team, UOG's got the expertise, maybe a fund set up to reduce the reaction time to respond to these problems. And the last point really I'd like to touch on is a lot of the impediments that we have to agriculture here currently on Guam. And these are probably going to be increased or magnified with the impending buildup. For instance, the cost of water continues to climb, not just for the farmers, but for everyone. But in the case of farmers and food production, we have to compete against places that are very, very heavily subsidized. Their water is subsidized, labor, everything. They have the economy of scale working for them. We don't. And in the case of water, we pay $2.08 for 1,000 gallons of ag water. And some could say that's not much to pay for 1,000 gallons, but our operations are very water intensive. And if you look at our competitors in California, they don't even measure the cost by 1,000 gallons. They use what's called an acre foot. So they pay about $14 per acre foot of water. That's water 1 foot deep on an acre. We pay $2.08 for 1,000 gallons. So the disparity is tremendous. It makes it really hard to compete against countries that heavily subsidize their agriculture. And the food system, a lot of the companies that are involved are integrated on many levels. This enables them to ship things all over the world quite inexpensively. So once again, we're hoping that once our co-op becomes operational, that we can be more competitive. And part of being competitive and consistent and reliable is profitability. If it's not profitable to farm, sustainability, consistency, those all go out the window. Everybody is going to be, as we are now, all fighting for the same little piece of the market there. So as far as the co-op's goals, right now we're trying to focus on the most underserved markets on Guam, which are pretty much the hotels and restaurants and the military. There's very little local penetration into the military market currently, and with the build-up, their demand is going to increase even more. So we're right now looking for a land lease for a base of operations and looking at a lot of different sources for startup funds. So pretty much, and as was previously mentioned about the importance of land, it's the key to our success. The land, the water, and the sunlight, which is free, is all critical to our operation. And preserving it and taking care of it is really part of what we should be all about. And that pretty much wraps it up, folks. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you very much, Mr. Watson. Our next speaker, or presenter, is here to speak to us today about preparing for an energy-efficient and environmentally friendly future. Please welcome the Administrator of the Guam Environmental Protection Agency, Ms. Laura Lee T. Crisostomo.
First, I want to thank Senator Guthertz, Acting Speaker Senator Roy Respicio, the Guam legislators, senators, and the student body of the University of Guam for inviting me to speak on behalf of Guam EPA and the Guam Energy Office. Assistant Secretary Nashara and Mr. Bice, welcome back to Guam. If you keep coming, Mr. Bice, you should buy a house. The market's good right now. It's going to increase pretty soon when the military buildup happens. Preparing for an energy-efficient and environmentally friendly future. To prepare for an energy-efficient and environmentally friendly future, you need to start first with the basics. We need to address where we are today before taking steps to improve tomorrow. It is like a jigsaw puzzle, and to see the bigger picture of the puzzle, we need to put the pieces together and make sure the pieces fit together. In Guam EPA, the agency is reviewing regulations and laws under its purview, and that's what we're doing now, since we know we may have issues when the buildup starts. We are taking one program at a time, updating the mandates, polishing up for better clarification, removing the gray areas, and increasing our fees and fines. It is necessary to start charging fees for public service. Guam EPA has many regulations to enforce, but many with no cost to the customers. Although we are 100% federally funded for salaries and benefits, those funds are not increasing to address our increase of workload and needing more staff. We are currently drafting a supplemental budget request that will be forthcoming to the Guam legislature. However, this supplemental funding budget for 2010 is not tapping into the general fund, but tapping to our special funds. For the past years, we've been bringing in more money with our permit fees and penalties into our special funds, but we always get allocated less than what we bring in. We hope to get full support of the Guam legislature in approving our supplemental budget requests that should be coming in by January. Thank you, Senator Roy Respicio. I got one, I need 14 more. I got two, thank you. Oh, do I need a clicker? Oh, you have it, Chris, thank you. So what have we been doing? And which do I click? Technical difficulties. Why don't I just say next slide? Okay. The middle one, the white? The arrow? Oh. Okay. We'll move on. Okay. So putting the pieces together, I already addressed what we're doing now. And okay, the military buildup is coming. What are we also doing to prepare ourselves? Yes, it's important to put the pieces together so we can be prepared for the island buildup. Regardless of our limited resources, we still need to prepare, so we have to, what can we do within our restricted funding? The agency requested technical assistance from US EPA to conduct an internal environmental impact assessment training for the agency. Since US EPA is the proving authority of the NEPA process, it has a specific division or office for this process and can provide technical assistance if requested. Of course, we have to come up with the funds to make this happen. So we budgeted for last year, and we held an EIA training last November with the perception that the draft EIS will be coming out in March 2009. Like, every time there's a challenge, you make it an opportunity. And so when we found out that the draft EIS was going to be delayed, we once again requested for another EIS training. We budgeted, and right now, as I speak, the class of about a small group, 30 Government of Guam employees are being trained to prepare themselves to review an EIS document. And about 3 o'clock, I have to rush up there and give them their certificates of completion. And we're really excited. We don't want other agencies to feel intimidated when they see this 10 volumes of documents of thousands and thousands of pages. So that's why we extended our internal in-house training. We only took 10 seats, We're supposed to only have 30. We took 10 seats and for Guam EPA, and we gave the rest to the other agencies. We have Public Works in there, GPA, GWA, Port Authority, most of the agencies, and some that did not participate last November. And we even invited, we served 2 seatings for Navy. Don't ask me why. They're the ones that's doing this, but we still send it out, and we offer the seatings to Navy. So NAVFAC, MAR, and NAVFAC Pacific, 2 reps are in there, also in the EIS training. So that's what we're doing. Another part that we're doing is, for the past 3 years, Guam EPA, along with Navy and Air Force, have been holding a Guam Environmental Forum every 6 months to continue a positive dialogue when discussing concern issues. First time we met, the dialogue was not too positive, but we knew we had to work together regardless. We have been taking turns hosting the forum. Guam EPA hosted the last forum 3 weeks ago. It was 1 full day discussion on regulations, updating from the permit working group, and establishing more work groups that would address more issues on a regularly basis. Having continued dialogue on our regulations is necessary to ensure no roadblocks when construction plans start coming to Guam EPA for permits for the build-up. We need to ensure that any type of progress, whether it's in the military base, in the businesses, the residents, that we should still reduce or lessen the impact to our environment. With the direction from the governor, the regulatory agencies also met, and we formed our own permitting subcommittees. Guam EPA, Department of Public Works, Department of Land Management, SHPO of Parks and Recs, Department of Agriculture, Bureau of Statistics and Plans, and the 2 utilities, Guam GPA and GWA. We've been meeting to look at our regulations. Where are the problem areas? How do we streamline? And ways to make the process of constructing a house or building go smoother with not much delays. Yes, time is costly to all parties involved. The regs are there and have been there for many years, yet we still encounter all the time, I don't know about this law, I didn't know this is required, and the list goes on. From these meetings, we can already see that more awareness and outreach are needed, but that costs money to do so. So we are working at where we can start that doesn't cost anything, except for man hours to do presentations at groups or even to professional associations. For instance, last year, Guam EPA reached out to Guam Chamber of Commerce and Guam Hotel Restaurant Association to do training on our most frequently asked permit regulations. They provided the venue, and Guam EPA managers and staff presented the regulations to small groups of 25 for each session, providing a more personal customer service approach. We hope to do this again in the beginning of the first quarter of next year. So we need to continue the dialogue and even start new dialogues of what is going to happen to Guam in a very short time. Many federal agencies at all levels and divisions are still not aware of this buildup. When the talk of the ARA dollars was happening early February of this year, my contacts at the Department of Energy in DC were not aware of the buildup. Conferences like this, one held by the University of Guam last week at the Sheraton, are necessary to continue the dialogue with our federal counterparts, bring awareness to our people, and even to our children. Guam is going to change. We need to keep discussing, taking actions on our part by working out the basics first, and find ways to prepare for the challenges and making those challenges into opportunities for Guam. So, like when I was mentioning the puzzle earlier, the other pieces of the puzzle also is for preparing for the build-up is going green. Some private businesses are recycling their cardboards and boxes and doing paperless paychecks. Some companies are implementing green purchasing. They also purchase recycled paper and energy-efficient office equipment. They even financially support organizations and school programs that are implementing green initiatives. Kudos to those companies that are doing that. Anderson Air Force Base started a curbside recycling at the base houses up north. Navy's conducting a couple of renewable and alternate energy assessments. They are already about to install PV systems to some buildings to lower their energy consumption, which Mr. Secretary had mentioned earlier. Of course, Department of Defense has that money to do that, and Government of Guam didn't. However, what is Gov Guam doing? Right now, thanks to our great national leader, President Obama, for deploying millions and millions of dollars to states and territories through the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. Guam Energy Office just received the entire $19 million of the State Energy Program grant. Last year, that same grant was about $150,000 for 2 staff, 2 projects, and office operations. This September, we received the $19 million for a 3-year period. These dollars will cover many activities and projects. Activities such as energy audits, retrofitting the public buildings, doing renewables installations, doing assessments, and a lot of outreach activities. President Mori, you mentioned the Micronesia Center for Sustainability. We budgeted in there money to help out to the regional islands. However, it's going to go through the University of Guam, like the university gave us a proposal a couple months ago. And so the University of Guam, with the ARA money that we would provide to them through a grant, they would help out the regional islands with technical assistance and provided a regional roadmap for energy sustainability for the islands. $1 million we received from the Weatherization Low Income Program grant. We are partnering with GORA since the criteria is strictly for low-income residents. Rather than reinventing the wheel, Guam Energy Office is teaming up with GORA that have its criteria set of who qualifies for low income. The only part about the ARA is the restrictions. It's a lot of red tape. For example, one of the assessments we wanted to address because Guam Power Authority wanted to entertain was a geothermal assessment. With the ARA dollars, you can do an assessment, but you can't use the money to dig because that would kick in the NEPA process. It can delay the money, the dollars for Guam, and so we want to stay away from anything that would delay the money for being held up. And so we are looking at a different approach of doing a geothermal assessment rather than what GPA had proposed with using that money to actually dig. Okay, and so, but we're still going to entertain a lot of assessments, at least provide the framework. We don't want to say, why, did you ever entertain, for example, the ocean OTEC, and GPA did a preliminary assessment already, and so they invested money in that, and they did that assessment. They shared it also with Navy. And so that's what we want to do. One of the ARA activities is to share what we have, meet all together and share what we have, lessons learned, learn from each other. I already talked to Navy's Energy Program Manager, Kevin Evans, I'm sorry, and he would give us a template of how they used to do their procurement for the solar-powered streetlights, because that's one of the activities we're also going to address in our ARA dollars. I want to take the opportunity to thank Congresswoman Bradalio for making the weatherization program available to Guam and the rest of the territories. This is one of the oldest programs of U.S. Department of Energy, and the territories were not included to receive dollars. State Energy Program Grant is also one of the oldest programs of Department of Energy, yet the territories were included. We brought our concerns to Congresswoman. In less than 2 years, she introduced the bill that got passed to clarify the language of that program, which allowed the territories to be included, and just in time for the ARA dollars to be distributed. Congresswoman Bradalio, on behalf of the people of Guam, thank you for making this happen. Okay, I'm moving. Okay, part of the puzzle too is how can we all play a role? And so we talked about what the business sectors are doing, what the government is doing. So what are we doing? How can we all make our island more energy efficient and environmentally friendly? And it's basically we start at home, going green in your home. And it's very important because you can reduce your utility costs. You save money, it's good for the environment, and do your part in making a difference locally and globally. Ways to go green, you do the basics. No cost to go green by doing basic conservation practices. Practice turning on and off when needed. Lights, air conditioning system, water heater, television, stereo, computer, vampire devices. A lot of you have your cell phones and your Blackberries, and a lot of times you go and you charge it, and then you take it out and you leave the charger in there on the wall, like somebody's leaving something there, I could see it. When you take out that, you take the whole charger out. The charger is still draining power, regardless if you took your BlackBerry out and you unhooked it. The charger's still on the wall, it's draining. And so even those little kilowatts adds up. And so those are called vampire devices. Another thing is water conservation. These are things you can do at home, real basic, no cost to go green. Fix the leaks, the cracks. Maintenance is part of going green. A lot of times we forget about the maintenance. We have a concrete home. The infrastructure can last more than 50 years, but you need to keep up the maintenance for that building or your home to be very operable. And bottom line is reduce, reuse, recycle. And when you're investing, some cost to go green in your home, you invest in renewable systems. There's solar power panel systems out there for water heaters, solar water heaters, and you can even purchase energy efficiency products. Remember, there's two types. The price tag is in twofold: actual cost up front and cost to operate over life cycle. And so just remember, even though sometimes you look at the Energy Star products or an energy efficiency rating product and you look at it and it costs a little bit more than those inefficient, and we get a lot of inefficient products because we're in the hub of the Orient. You know, in the long run, you're going to be spending more money for your power costs for that equipment that's in your home. You just pay attention. One of the things you do is pay attention, get educated about energy efficiency rating. It's very easy to look at it. It tells you how much it is. The higher the number, the better the equipment is. A lot of people ask, for example, right now, split air conditioners. That's in a lot of homes right now. And the EER that's being, for an energy efficiency split air conditioner is about 14. Okay, but that's in the U.S. Sadly to say, the demand in Guam is not as high. So we do have being sold, and they're Energy Star still, but they're like 12, okay? And the EER for a split air conditioner, so that the EER rating says 12. Well, you go around in some of the stores and you will find some of them are still at 10. And you're saying, okay, well, that sounds pretty good. The lower the number, the less efficient. The higher the number, the more efficient, right? So just remember, you're going to buy a car, and you want to buy a model 2010, now 2011 is out there, a new car. If you're buying an inefficient car, you're going to buy the body of a 2011 car, but you're going to buy an engine of the 1950s, okay? So that's how I'm going to address how energy efficiency. It's buying a car, you're going to get a nice body outside the split air conditioner, you know, looks really nice. Oh, look at that, it's white. Some of them are coming now, different colors. But what is the whole purpose of the engine, the compressor of that air conditioner, you know? And so pay attention to the EER rating. Another thing is just look for the Energy Star product. That's what it's all about. It's a joint program between Department of Energy and U.S. EPA. And what they do is they looked at what the U.S. products are out there, and then they categorize it, and they'll tell you the rating of it. And so, you know, you already know that if it's an Energy Star product, it's less to operate, it produces less heat, and results to less power bills, and it's good for the environment. And so, you know, if how we're gonna navigate our future, I really like this slide. Almost all my presentations, I like to include this slide because just for your information, it's not even in Guam, but it looks like Guam. It looks like going down to the Umataq. There's one over here, it says caution, approaching edge of Earth, navigate with care. Or you got the other one, good luck, but the arrows are all going different around. And so I prefer the sign all the way down there, and the second to the last that says stay alert. And the only way we're going to stay alert is we have to educate ourselves more and do our part too on protecting our land, our water, our ocean, our community, and our economy. Because, you know, Guam is maybe one island, and it's remote, but we're part of this world, and it's one planet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Crisostomo. Our next presenter is here to talk to us today about protecting our natural resources. Please welcome up the Administrator for the Guam Coastal Zone Management Program at the Bureau of Statistics and Plans, Ms. Vangie Lujan.
Thank you very much. Gosh, I'm glad Lorley tried this first because I hope it works for me. So, half a day and welcome everyone in the afternoon. And I know it's very difficult sometimes to get through that lunch period. But I'm not Tony Lamarena. Due to his lateness of the invitation, he was unable to change his appointment. I know he really wanted to come because he's more interesting than I am, but unfortunately he wasn't able to do that, and so he has sent me instead. So as Cliff said, I'm the administrator for the Guam Coastal Management Program, which is part of the Bureau of Statistics and Plans. But Tony is also the chairperson for the Natural Resources Subcommittee that used to be formerly with the CMTF. We're just a working group right now. And in terms of natural resources and the environment, the issue is so large and complex that within the working groups, we have subdivided or divided the entities into two separate sections. So Guam EPA handles all the issues related to the landfill, some of the pesticides, air quality, things like that. And our subcommittee strictly deals with issues related to the natural resources. So welcome everyone, and I hope that I'm going to be able to address any of your questions. When we were first formulated, we were the last subcommittee that was formulated, but we were very fortunate. We hired an excellent consultant to help us develop a strategy. So much so, so excellent he was that JIGPO took him from us. Wait, I'm pressing the button and it's not happening. Okay, what am I going to do here? I'm doing the arrow. The arrow. Okay, great. Oh, sorry. So our subcommittee has a very specific mission, and that mission is to ensure that we address issues related not just with the protection and conservation of Guam's natural resources, which, Chris, may I spend some time with you, because one of the issues is not just land, but it's also our natural resources with our ocean and our coral reefs and all the resources that are attached to that. So we're responsible for our limited natural resources to ensure that development is sustainable and that the impacts are mitigated. We have a large body of members in our group. You'll notice that from this slide that we have a lot of GovGuam agencies, but we also have a lot of private sector as well as NGOs that participate with us. We are very fortunate. We have many federal agencies here on Guam that also participate with us, Fish and Wildlife National Park, but we also have some participation from JIGPO and the Navy and Air Force as well. We also have a regional organization with the National Invasive Species Council, so they as well participate in the work that we do. The Natural Resources Committee, when we were being formulated, it wasn't something that we were strangers with each other. We're very fortunate. Our group normally works together with each other in reviewing the many years of EIS experience and DEISs and sitting down and discussing projects, because our resources are critical, that we really, and the capacity within the government agencies are limited, that we have learned over the years that in order for us to address these issues in a more effective and efficient way, we have to really work together as partners. So when we first got together, it was very easy. The memberships and the stakeholders were people that we already were working with. There's a large number of professionals that are a part of our group that really understand the issues and are experts in their field. Unfortunately, we have no funding for our group, so a lot of work we are depending on our relationship with our federal partners and our federal grants to address some of our issues and try to accomplish our goals. The meetings serve as a vehicle for us to exchange information. As Lorley explained, we also share our resources. So if there's a training like the GIS training or a training for NEPA or EIS review, we are able to exchange that information, and then a large body of us are able to participate in that training and exchange data. It also is an opportunity to exchange what each of the entities are doing in terms of the invasive species issue. We have a lot of presentations about the coconut rhinoceros beetle, for example, the projects that the Navy or the Air Force are doing, and what are the historic preservation issues that are, and the projects that are coming up as well. It's a great opportunity for us to network, We've developed strong partnerships with each other and share our resources, as I said. One of the important things that when we first got together was that we really wanted to be able to integrate the work that we're doing now with what this buildup is. Because a lot of the things that you're seeing today have been discussed a couple of years ago, but the things that will be addressed in this draft EIS and the things that we're preparing for, it's something that we've been doing over the last 10 years already. So we kind of have an idea of the types of projects that this EIS may have involved with it. So the areas of responsibility, as I said, has been separated between the Environmental Subcommittee, which handles all the regulatory issues, and the Natural Resources Subcommittee. So one of the things that we do are ensure that the resources are divided so that way we understand where our resources need to be placed. So our committee deals and focuses on coral reef ecosystems and its associated biological communities. Terrestrial ecosystems, we do have cultural and archaeological resources as part of our subcommittee. As I said, invasive species, and we've talked about invasive species, even President Maury had spoken about how that is, and as well as Mr. Watson. Invasive species is going to be a critical issue. We're dealing with it on a watershed approach, so the watershed ecosystem is critical. Migratory birds, wildlife, endangered species and their habitat, protected and marine mammals, and most especially, which is probably this last bullet, is the one that we have the greatest need to get our arms around, is direct and cumulative impacts and secondary impacts to our natural environment. Our subcommittee does not just deal with issues related to the military's buildup and their projects. The committee is sent up to address issues related to the military's projects, but the private sector development and Government of Guam projects as well. One of the criticisms or issues that came up while we were dealing with our military partners is that we don't necessarily treat all developers equally. The impacts may be the same, but the way that we address the concerns or the mitigation for that is not equal. And so we've listened to them and said, well, what can we do? So there are some things that we've done to try to ensure that our resources are protected from all development. So our group also talks about private sector development as well as Government of Guam development. One of the new initiatives that our group is going to be dealing with is a biosecurity plan. We're part of the Regional Invasive Species Council, and this is going to be an additional thing that we need to deal with. We are the hub, as many people know, and so transportation and importation is a critical thing, and that's how we are the, I think, invasive species poster child. The brown tree snake is our iconic species for that. We want to make sure that in this biosecurity plan, there's going to be strict regulations put in place for importation of goods, but also when people move here, what's going to happen? It's not just the building materials, but it's also their personal items that come here, cars and all of the other things. And one of the other issues that we want to ensure is that our sole source aquifer is protected as well. So, how have we been getting ready? Well, as Roylee said, we have been very good partners with the other environmental agencies as well as our federal partners. So our committee has been used as a great vehicle to communicate with Department of Defense and other stakeholders, our federal partners, our federal agencies, as well as other local Government of Guam agencies. We've done this several times where we take the actual project out to the community and explain to the members of the village, the committees in the villages, what these projects mean and what it means to their village. And so I think that we are using that as a great vehicle to get the word out, because sometimes you don't have time to read 20 pages, let alone 500, or I guess this EIS is in the neighborhood of 8,000 to 14,000, right? So I think we've taken it upon ourselves to really go through the documents, all the variety of EIS and some of the plans that we have in some of these projects, to take it to the grassroots and to the village themselves, the village members themselves, and say, okay, well, here's what this says, and here's how this might impact you, and here are our concerns. We are going to be scheduling something in December. I know people are thinking it's Christmas, maybe nobody's going to come, but we are looking at it, it's Christmas and people are out in the malls, and this may be an opportunity for us to really engage the community about understanding what may be in the document and their concerns. We've worked with, we're part of a group of people, including the NGO TNC, to work to get that in lieu fee as part of an option in mitigation. And we're working with our federal partners and some other granting opportunities to get funding to address some of the work that we need to accomplish. Okay, so the other things that we need to do, which I have some of the documents now, is in addressing the needs to impacts to our natural resources. It's critical that Guam has a land use plan. And Guam hasn't had a land use plan for 40 years now. I guess in the late 60s was the last time we had a master plan. But it's critical that we get a handle on development. And so this year we have completed the North and Central Land Use Plan. It looks like this. It's on our website, and I'll give you the website. And we're going to go through the adoption of this plan, because I think we were able to get a lot of people engaged in this. People that are impacted by the villages that this plan addresses, but also developers, the Chamber of Commerce Hotel Restaurant Association, and it has been available to our federal partners as well. So here's this document that our subcommittee has developed to address issues related to competing uses of land. We've also developed GIS tools that address areas where critical habitat may be, and that is that's in the process. We are very fortunate. We do have a very skillful GIS team that is doing that. We did it as part of a master plan effort with DOD, and so we're taking that tool and we're using it on our private property and government of Guam properties to ensure that siting of facilities are going to be in areas where the least impact to critical habitat. We also are working with the Western Chief Executives on a regional invasive species council. As I said, this, as the President has mentioned, is an impact that will have far-reaching effects to all of our brothers and sisters in Micronesia. And so we're learning from them about how they protect some of their resources, and we want to make sure that we have that open communication. And we don't want to have something that we're doing here impact their ecosystems as well. And then our very good contractor had completed early on in this process a natural resources strategy. And it's a very voluminous document, but however, it addresses all the issues related to what we think would be critical to addressing this buildup. Here's just some of the things that are in the document itself. It has a natural resource management context, ensuring that conservation initiatives are the primary goals. There's issues related to biodiversity, species of greatest conservation need. Once again, that famous invasive species, cultural historic resources, resource agency capacity, which is one of the biggest problems and challenges that we all have here, is capacity issues, as well as ensuring that a legal framework is there and that we've addressed certain gaps within our own local laws to ensure that natural resources are going to be protected. And this is also available, and it's available also on our website. One of the things that we are sure about is that we have to have a better handle on how we're going to mitigate some of the impacts. And to do that, our contractor was able to provide for us and develop with all the members of our subcommittee a mitigation policy for the development. But this actually applies to all development on Guam. It does address some of the things that we feel that are critical and where our resources should be placed, and the variety and options that are available in terms of options, including in lieu fee, mitigation banking, and other things that I think will be helpful in the next stage of this development of the draft EIS. I know that one of the issues that we've been educated about is really mitigation is a partnership with Army Corps of Engineers, and so we're going to be doing more to engage with Army Corps to make sure that we select appropriate projects as a result of our mitigation efforts. The other thing that we've learned over the years is that it's critical that we address issues on our land through a watershed approach, because we're an island, everything that you do on the land will impact our marine resources and our coral reef resources. So now we are looking at management components and management plans for all of our critical areas through a watershed approach, so that we understand that the end result of all the impact from development will happen in our ocean and our nearshore, and will impact coral reefs, our fisheries, and the other parts that are critical to other things, especially our cultural and traditional practices of fishing. They'll be impacted by development. So we've now are looking at using a watershed approach for management. We have a pilot area in the PD Asin watershed. There's several projects within the Santos Memorial Park. I know in one of the previous projects, the Mosso Reservoir was used as a mitigation area project for reforestation and to ensure that sedimentation is not going to go in our bay. Many places around the island, after a big rainstorm, you see that whole gunk of sediment in our bays. Well, that's having a huge impact on the ability for our coral reefs to recuperate and for fish to be there. And who wants to walk in gunky stuff, right? So even our recreational activity and our ability for people to go out to the beach will be impacted. One of the other things that we've learned is that we have to engage our communities, and we are using our community-based projects to go into the communities and have the communities engage in keeping their community environmentally friendly and protection of their resources. So we've worked with several NGOs to ensure tree planting activities are done in the PD Asin watershed. So that will have an impact on the MPA that's in that area. What are the challenges that we face, and I'm sure that this is going to be something that you've heard many times throughout the period that we're dealing with the buildup, is capacity. We're trying to build the capacity within our agencies, but we don't have enough funding. One of the things that we're finding is that perhaps you don't have the funding, but our federal partners are going to be able to assist us, and maybe we don't have all the expertise. So we've been very successful in obtaining our partnership, through our partnership with our federal agencies, readdressing the way that we are using our grant funds, so that the grant funds are directed towards the goals and objectives and strategies of this buildup. We want to make sure that enforcement, especially in terms of monitoring and in terms of private development, to ensure that conditions that are given to them through the Land Use Commission are complied with. So enforcement's a big issue for us, and that enforcement may not happen tomorrow, but the enforcement of when this buildup happens, we need more enforcement in the next 5 to 10 years. One of the things that we are addressing now is that we recognize the impacts that may not be under our control. Climate change and sea level rise is some of the other impacts to our natural resources that we may not have control over. However, we understand that if you build a resilient community, both ecosystem resilient community, then you might have a chance of ensuring that those resources will be able to come back or be able to be rejuvenated or not be impacted as much. And I know with sea level rise, our concern there is the capacity of our aquifer as the sea level rise, and what will that sea level rise have to the ability for us to pull out water for our people. And one of the things that I know that Lorlee and Chris and I are concerned about is all the increase of all that permit issues that are out there. I know that a lot of developers think of it as a evil that they have to deal with. Well, we do too. We don't like to, I mean, it's a lot of paperwork and it's a lot of issues, but it's something that we all need to do, because in order for us to ensure that our resources are protected, all our laws have to be complied with. And of course, enforcement. So what are our next steps that we're going to be doing in the next couple of years? We want to ensure that we have real good tools, one of them being our utilization of a GIS, to ensure that siting for both federal and non-federal properties are done appropriately. We want to make sure, and this is where we are asking the assistance of the legislature in the adoption of the Guam Compensatory Mitigation Policy and the adoption of the Guam Land Use Plan for North and Central, and then to extend it to our Central and South areas. The other thing is that, as I mentioned, we have to have a very strong biosecurity plan and the engagement of all the stakeholders to agree to what this plan will be and to ensure that they comply. We need to develop better monitoring tools because we all understand that this is going to have an impact to our environment and our natural resources, but we don't know to the extent. Well, it might be that some of these impacts are actually positive impacts because not all things will be negative. So we want to make sure that we're monitoring both the positive impacts and the negative impacts. And then, of course, we want to make sure that we are able to have cumulative and secondary assessment tools out there because the things that we do today you may not see the impacts until later on. And a lot of people say this, but this is just my little retail operation or something. How bad can that possibly be? It's just a small thing. But when you have 20 of these same little retail operations in a small area, the impacts are cumulative. So that's something that we need to create a tool for. So thank you very much. There's a lot of the documents that I have here are available on our website. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact us after this, but I think that we're having a question and answer period. So thank you very much. I hope it gives you an idea of what our Natural Resources Committee are doing and the impacts that we're trying to address.
Thank you very much, Vanju. Now we have some questions from the audience. I do have a couple up here. We're going to go through them. And our first question is for Chris Duenas. Could you address just a little more specifically what you see as the land use issues raised by the military buildup?
I think the biggest issue is going to be in the research that the committees have done, and obviously it's no secret, the military officials, and I think Guam probably is maybe one of the first or second to expand on a new idea and a new concept for the military, which is joint basing. I think once they get beyond that and they've exhausted all of their capacity, of course, as I said, this will be a negotiated process, but the biggest impact I think we're going to see is they are going to need a bigger footprint. And so we're going to have to figure out how to make sure that footprint is not so overwhelming that you know there is not it sort of takes over the capacity of resources for the island. So I think those negotiations are going to be intense. I think it's going to take a community effort. But here's something else. As we discussed in this process, and everybody's talking about the positives and the negatives, I think one positive is the fact that when you look at Ancestral Lands Commission and you look at the inventory of land, obviously there can be a number of positives by working with the military on their needs for additional property, such as the resources that will be garnered for them, the finances, and the ability to mitigate or to compensate families who will never be compensated anyways for the property that currently exists under the inventory, and also to expand and develop other properties that are currently in the inventory of the Land Use Commission or the Ancestral Lands, as well as Chamorro Land Trust. So I think really the biggest challenge that we're going to face is how are we going to be good neighbors in usage of expansion to ensure that it's a win-win-win situation for the people of Guam, as well as to accommodate the needs of taking care of this unprecedented amount of military forces on Guam. And I think one of the major issues and the concerns that I've heard from the folks in the community is going to be surrounding training. And I think that in terms of, if you look at the bases now, I mean, they're clean, they're beautiful, they're well kept. Most of our people, because of our patriotism and the like, that are in the Guard and reserves and in the active duty. I think every one of our families has somebody in the military, and then they talk about the access when they go to base to shop and the development that's happening there. It's very impressive in terms of the way that's moving forward. And I'm sure the land that they eventually might need, will be kept, in the same pristine conditions too. And so I think the opportunities right now here are to mitigate the problems that they look like problems now, but to work closely and ensure that all the benefits that can come out of working with our military partners to ensure, best use of the property and best compensation.
Okay, thank you very much. Vanji, did you want to add to that?
do. I wanted to say that I hope that we're going to learn from our mistakes of the past or sins of the past, as someone had said to me, in that when we went through a development boom in the 90s, it was somewhat haphazard. We don't have a real plan. That's why I think it's very critical that the adoption of the Guam the land use plan, at least, then a zoning plan after that, needs to be done, because what's happening now is that little people that have property or people that have resources and funding because they're backed by someone with a lot of money are able to develop their property, and they can go and have it zone change, and if they don't like what the land use commission is going to do, they can simply come down to the legislature. And I think that type of haphazard kind of planning is not going to benefit all the people in the future, especially in relation to what happens over our aquifer. We have to be very careful about the type of development that we are doing, especially since we have very little enforcement, to be able to do it in a more comprehensive way, in a way that looks towards the future, and not just because you have the money. It's kind of funny, we spent a lot of time in the 80s and 90s thinking that the tourist dollar was so critical we had to just agree with everything somebody who had money wanted to do. And now we have a lot of derelict hotels sitting in Tumon. And luckily for Guam, we have some opportunities here where some of those hotels were changed to address some condominium needs and some of the housing needs that are occurring. But I think that in this development, we have to balance what is our local economic driver, which is our tourism, plus our needs of our own community to be able to raise a family and to be able to afford a home, with the needs of the military. Because I said this to someone, and I don't mean it if you're from Hawaii, we do not want to be Hawaii, where local people cannot afford to have a house or to run their own business or utilize their property, because as Chris mentioned, property is a limited resource here. So I think a master plan and keeping to that needs to be addressed. Needs to be adopted.
Well, let me ask you a quick question on that. You're right now, both you and Laura Lee are pretty much engaged through your groups with the JIGPO and the military. I presume that you're bringing up some of these lessons learned. I presume that you're discussing these things and you're looking for ways to mitigate impacts on our aquifer and all of the different things, from traffic to who knows what. And is that a healthy dialogue? Is that something that you feel you're getting the feedback on and that you're a planning partner in?
We were having these partnership meetings for the last 2 years. We used to have these meetings maybe every 6 months or quarterly or whatever. And let me tell you, going to those meetings was painful. You're sitting there thinking, oh, I just heard that. Oh, do we need to sit here? We're also very busy. Must we be here? But in retrospect, those were actually very good meetings. We met all the people that are writing up the EIS. We talked about what was happening in the public hearings when they were coming here. We talked about what our issues were. We had some different groups of people that looked at what the local issue was, what the processing issue was, what the capacity issues were going to be. And I think that initially, we have had a working relationship with DOD through this process for the last 2.5 years, I think. And it has been a good relationship. It was painful. We think it's painful. But now we think it was a good thing that we did that.
Laurie, you have anything to add that?
We did see a lot of benefits from meeting on the partnership sessions when we saw the early release of some portions of the draft EIS. We saw that some of the work we were discussing and some of our concerns were addressed in there. So that was good to see that those meetings were very fruitful.
Great. We have another question from our audience. This morning, Lou Leon Guerrero mentioned that there is a great concern about the military testing in our environment. Do you agree? And what is the EPA doing to prepare for this?
Which type of testing?
Maybe the writer of this could add could add to this, but again, all it says is military testing in our environment. I presume I don't really quite know what the context of that testing is, but has things like this been brought up in your discussions?
Yes.
Testing, training areas. I presume they have.
Yes, they usually follow. There's standards for them to follow, regulations, and they do. There's a lot of cleanup programs right now that the military has been doing, and it's they've cleaned up. This is from back to the after the wartime, and they've been doing a good job doing cleanups. Something that we hope to see outside on the outside the fence line, but they do a good job cleaning up. We follow, we monitor. We get some funding to monitor them. So from the different federal agencies, which is a good part with us. But yes, there's in regards to training. If it's training, like their shooting range, there are regulations they follow, and they do mitigate on those that when they temper it into the environment. Yes, they do.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a question here for Mr. Watson and Mr. Duenas. Would it be feasible to institute a program, or at least offering, agriculturally related programs to the youth and to our community? Goes on, I don't believe the youth have a clear understanding of how dangerous, underlined, it is to live so dependent on importing. Can we reserve some land for this vital purpose, or make lots, or make more lots like the one farmed by the prisoners? Okay. Maybe a lot should be set aside from each village for that community to cultivate as a group. Age 22, concerned student. Mr. Duenas or Mr. Watson?
Sure. It would be great if the available lands could be reserved and dedicated to agriculture. I have even suggested to the university that they could work out a program with, let's say, Chamorro Land Trust, where students who major in agriculture could maybe, as a reward for majoring in and going into it, maybe get a lease as part of their when they get their degree, let's say. Mostly we get university graduates in agriculture. They're working for the government. They're not farming. They're doing other things. It's difficult to make a profit in this business. So the better lands that are reserved for it, of course, the better the results will be. And the key is the youth, because there's let's face it, guys like me are going down the drain here pretty quick, and there aren't a lot of young folks that are looking at this. Farming used to be, especially on Guam, used to be a very prestigious profession. People looked up to farmers. In my family especially, there were several of my uncles who fed a whole bunch of the extended family, and they were very well respected. Nowadays, it's kind of looked at as a dirty job, and there's not much prestige, there's not much profits with it, so you're going to have a hard time getting people interested until they can see that really there is potential there. Done properly, you can make a profit.
I think what's important here is, obviously, in the inventory of land right now under the Chamorro Land Trust is a number of acres of land that is already provided for this purpose. Are we currently maximizing that acreage? I think that has to be the first question. I think the second answer to that question is, we have a University of Guam that's a land grant institution, and I think we have to probably become more exploratory in terms of how we can develop more interest in our youth to look at the potentials of farming. I think what's important is I've talked to a number of farmers, including the Vice President, Ernie Wistic, and I think it's not about land, it's about picking it starts with land, but in terms of not having to we're not the United States, we don't have these vast thousands and millions of acres, so let's be realistic. But it's the kind of farming that you do, and understanding that the farming on Guam has to be a 3 to 6 month crop to be profitable and have that turnaround time. I think we also need to look at exploratory markets that are more interesting in terms of making money, like not requiring such huge parcels of land by possibly doing more hydroponics, more type of herbs and things that make the high dollar turnaround down in Tumon for all the chefs and all the new restaurants that are coming up in Guam that require all these sophisticated type of things for cooking that actually have a quick turnaround time with regard to its production, doesn't require a whole bunch of land, not as quite as dirty, and actually may be attractive to young people. So I think it's a combination of, first of all, looking at the inventory we have, maximizing what we have, and then marrying that with programs that are attractive, that actually have that turnaround time in crop and have that high yield in terms of turnaround, that it's just as good to be a farmer in a greenhouse than it is to be a senator. No. But, but I'm saying that it has a real salary and real potential, sustainability, because hotels aren't going away. With the military coming to Guam and all of our lifestyles being elevated and possibly are gaining potential, we're all going to want to eat out at nice restaurants, and those restaurants are going to flourish, and they're going to need stuff, and they're not going to want to probably bring it on an airplane or from Japan. So I think that's the approach, and so it's not necessarily about tons of acreage set aside. I think it's maximizing what we have, and then if private landowners see that going on, maybe apartments won't be so attractive anymore. Maybe innovative farming methods that have good turnaround in terms of cash, and maybe other things like that. I think that's the way we got to go. Instead of saying, here's a block of land just for this purpose because we need to farm it. It's like, no, let's let the economy of scale generate that.
Benji?
I also think we need to look at subsistence farming. I know with our program in our watershed pilot in SMP, we have a community yard project, which working with the University of Guam College of Agriculture, they have instituted or obtained residents that want to do a couple of things with things that you would normally eat, so like lemongrass and types of things that they can do within their yard. And so it does a couple of things. It does reduction of sedimentation and erosion, but it also provides food for their families on a subsistence level, because as prices go up and as you have more people that can't necessarily afford to buy stuff at Payless or wherever, they do have some things where that serves two things: feed your family, but also help ensure that you're protected. And I think that the environment is protected. But I also think that we need to look at towards things that are native plants that could be planted, that typically that when we were growing up, you saw more often as part of the regiments of plants that could be used for our mitigation at Maso or Seti Bay or areas where we're looking for using those places, reforestation projects for reduction of sedimentation as a mitigation project. So maybe choosing plants that serve dual purposes.
So it's not just about agriculture, it's also about...
Well, it's agriculture
renewing our-
not to make money, but to feed your family.
Right.
Same thing.
Same thing, but,
Yeah.
okay, and I do believe that farming is a noble profession. And I have to say, when I was growing up, I remember going down to Agani at the farmer's market, and many of you in the room still remember that. And that was the place where farmers were all respected for the goods that they brought. And I'm glad to see also that places like Payless have consistency in product coming out, whether it's basil or whether it's the long green beans. So congratulations to the Farmers Cooperative for the work that you're doing. Okay, we have a question for Laura Lee. And the question asks, how does Guam EPA and the Energy Office efforts compare with DOD's efforts on Guam? Are we collaborating, and how are we collaborating?
DOD? Okay. Are we collaborating? Yes, we are. In regards to the Guam EPA side, like I've mentioned, we do meet on a regular basis. We also, in the Guam Energy side, we, like I mentioned, Kevin Evans, who's the Energy Program Manager for Navy, he's constantly visiting the office. The staff meet with him on a regular basis. They discuss. We knew what was the projects that was happening out there 2 years ago when they were just doing groundbreaking already. We knew what was happening out there about the wind assessment, because they share the information with us. So collaboration, yes.
Okay, there was another question also about LEED certification. Now, I know it's a little technical, but I think it also leads into other things like what we're doing in the government of Guam. It's kind of like, you know, you don't ask somebody to do something that you wouldn't do, and making sure that your own house is clean before you talk about somebody else's. And so, I mean, is there a program in EPA and the Energy Office to kind of get us on that bandwagon of, as far as our public buildings and perhaps, yeah, I know you talked about an outreach for
Yes.
the private sector. Is the same thing being done in our government?
Yes. For LEED is much more, how do I say that? It's kind of high up there.
Yes, it is.
Yes. To do a LEED building, you've got to start first when you're going to draw up the plans. You can't turn an existing building and try to make it LEED because there's a lot of restrictions in there. For example, LEED addresses preserving the grass, keep it green. But if you have a small land space and you need that for parking, you're going to address parking over keeping the yard. And so LEED is kind of, it's really more effective to do a LEED building when you're going to start planning to build a building, not to retrofit. What we're doing with the Energy Office is we're going to provide a lot of training. GCC, Guam Community College, has submitted a proposal for the ARA dollars to be the vehicle to train the people out there, the workforce, how to do energy audits. And they would provide that, they would do that in their curriculum. The University of Guam is taking it a step further, and they want to, they don't have an engineering program on board on the University of Guam, but they're looking at starting up, it's like a 2-year program. They start the basic courses at the university, and then those people that are interested in being engineers would go to the off-island, to another university, whether it's Hawaii, which they have set up, and continue the remaining 2 years to get that engineering degree. Where we coming in with the ARA money is, which was allowed, and when we put it in our proposal, is to invest a little in making those engineers tap into being environmental engineers, because that's the way it is right now. Environmental engineers out there in the market get paid. It's in a demand. They get paid more than now electrical or civil. The people are looking for environmental engineers, and so we want to train our workforce, hopefully, and get our students to be more involved in that, and set up a scholarship program with the ARA dollars. When we can do that, and bring people that we invested come back to Guam. And so the university would be that on the engineering program, and the Guam Community College would be provide the curriculum for energy audit trainings.
Well, does that mean that part of the people won't just do it? I mean, although Gov Guam Credit Union is a great example because they wanted to be that steward for us. Is there efforts towards changing the building code to ensure that better environmental techniques are being integrated into building? Because for the government, but also for private sector, are we moving in that direction as well? Because I know that we're requiring DOD's buildings to be as energy efficient and consume less water and to use their gray water and all of that. But how about Guam?
Yeah, we are not requiring that. Guam Department of Defense required that. Okay, but in Guam there is a minimum energy code inside our building code standards. The bottom line is compliance, and Guam Energy Office through federal funds did 3 phases to input energy codes inside the Guam building code standards. But it's compliance. It's even though we train the building inspectors and Department of Public Works, its bottom line is it's compliance. And just Hawaii, who's very, very very outstanding for a lot of energy initiatives, their compliance is only 80%. And of all the building plans that have been coming in and how they enforce it. And so ours is we're down in the low percentage, but at bottom line is it's just a lot of training, a lot of outreach. And the ARA dollars does request that the energy building code is much more in a higher standard. The governor recently signed the International Building Code, which is a little bit different than what we were already working on. However, it does address what the ARA dollars wanted us to address, and that's what we're going to look at. There's some parts there in that new building code, or the international building code, where in the energy portion it's great, but like for the fire department, they're not ready to enforce, because it takes them into a higher step, and they don't have the staff and the equipment or the training to do that code yet. So it's just there's a grace period of everybody getting up to speed on that international building code that was just recently passed into law.
Okay, thank you very much. We have another question from the audience. What one thing should the legislature do to help make Guam food secure? Interesting
The
question.
food? Like, will we eat food?
Food as safety-wise, or when they say secure, they mean safety, or?
I believe they're talking about safety relative to, imports, what you were talking about in your
Yeah,
speech.
the security I was kind of talking about is, the fact that if you're so dependent on imports, anything that goes wrong, if you lack the ability to produce your food locally, there's going to be riots in the street, because food is something you can't do without. But really, there's quite a bit of land that's being used for agriculture. There's a number of farmers. What really is lacking is coordination, and that goes a long way. When you talk about food safety, everybody doing their own kind of thing it makes things more difficult to police. But and if it's organized, and EPA is starting to has some new regulations concerning pesticides and who can use pesticides and sell their product, and the markets and stuff are getting on board on that. So that's a good direction to be headed in. So it is safety-wise, it is being looked at. It is a concern, and as far as the Farmers Co-op is concerned, once we become operational, we will require that all of our members be certified in pesticide handling and in food safety. So as well as I think every participant should be able to pass an EPA public health inspection of their sites and things along that line.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Guam EPA has a program, the Pesticides Division. It's only a staff of 3. However, they're out there all the time inspecting the farms. Though you don't see it, there are several hundred farmers out there registered, and we go out there and we monitor them. We can't, as far as food, it's public health. It's not Guam EPA. So where we go on the plants itself. As long as it's not the fruit and it's the plant, we can get them there. As far as regulation and enforcement, our pesticides program is very strict, because bottom line is pesticides means poison to kill, those bugs and all that. So basically, if you don't use it properly, if you don't, I'm talking about really use it properly, because a lot of times we go out there, we find the farmers with their workers, and they're not covered properly when they're spraying the pesticides. They don't mix the chemicals the way it's supposed to, which can, I don't want to go there about the food part, but it's not. So we really monitor it. Yes, they have to be certified to use restrictive pesticides, and we do go out there constantly. In fact, we brought it to the Chamber of Commerce about the pesticides, how we're getting involved more, because we were worried about the restrictive pesticide not being used properly. I won't say the name, because we're not supposed to endorse any stores or brand names, but there is a supermarket out there that made it a policy now. They do not accept food from the farmers when they bring it in, unless they show their card that they've received training through the university, the community college, which we have a program with them, the joint program, to certify that they are trained to use restrictive pesticides. And so that store does require, if a farmer comes in and says, you want to buy some of my eggplants and all that, they'll say, do you have your card saying that you're certified to use pesticides properly? and you receive that training. And so that's how we ensure, at least for the public's safety, but we focus more on the environment, which is the plants itself, that they use the products properly.
Do we have any more questions from the audience? Well, I think we have about 5 more minutes, but I'm going to ask you a question. I've got a question of my own. How's that? We've got this buildup coming. It's a good thing. It's going to have some impacts. You're all in very important positions within, and as are you, because you're going to be affected one way or another, Mr. Watson. How do you see this going right now? Do you think that we're engaged enough? Is there something we're missing in the engagement that we should be more engaged in? You're looking at it from your agencies, from your perspective, and I'm asking you from that perspective as well. And I know that you're already engaged with the military and with the planners and how to mitigate these certain things, but there are other impacts that probably aren't addressed as fully as we'd like in the upcoming DEIS or whatever discussions you've had. I mean, what more can we do than what you're doing now to make sure that we come up with a win-win situation?
Oh, I'm going to say money. We need money. Yes, because a lot of our, a lot of what we can do, it always comes down to money. Do we have the money for it?
You know, prior to becoming the director of land management, I was at Department of Youth Affairs and also the chairperson for public safety. Now, I'll be straightforward. I thought the original negotiations when we were sitting at the table and found out what JIGPO meant and what that acronym was and what was going on, I wasn't happy. I wasn't happy with the way things were going, and I think that when we originally sat at the table, it was kind of probably what we used to think of in terms of relationships between the local government and the military. And I have to say that, like this forum and so many other full court press that's been on in terms of being at the table, I have seen a huge change in terms of the relationship that we have with JIGPO and military partners. And I think our constant noise has been effective because I think it's been heard. And I can say now that even in the discussions with the Natural Resources Committee and starting to sit down and just the way we're at the table, it's like we were here before and I think we're here now. And so I would say that if there's any one thing that we can do, senators that put this forum together, I'm so impressed the military folks have stayed all day. They're here and JIGPO. And I mean, it's great. And I would say that just do everything to get here, because everybody really, I mean, the government of Guam is loaded with experts. I was glad with some of the presentations this morning when folks were talking about, look, we've got the expertise here. We've got the people here. Let's invest in our people. Let's build this together. Let's make sure this works for both of us. And I think that what's important here now is just to keep talking, keep the dialogue open, and understand. And I think, like I said, get here. And I think there's a lot of mutual respect going on now and recognition of each other's talents. And so I would say that as this process is going forward, just keep up this dialogue and make sure that it works for both of us. Because I believe it's inevitable anyway, so it might as well be mutually beneficial.
Any comments? Mr. Watson?
Yeah, I'd just like to agree with Chris here that things do seem to be improving as far as the input from the community, and the input is actually being incorporated into the action plan, I guess you could say.
I think that one of the things is that we're really trying, the community of Guam really wants to hold DOD to the fire, their feet to the fire about what the impact is going to be. But I also think that we have to take on, the community of Guam has to take on a couple of things. One is have a realistic expectation of what this buildup really means, because it's not going to be the be-all, end-all to the economic situation on Guam, and it's not going to address all the issues for everybody. Because, of course, in addition to our natural resources that will be impacted, there's going to be an impact to our cultural practices and our traditions as well, because it's about the people, right? But to have realistic expectations on the Guam side, on the local side, as well as on the military side. The military is not going to address all of our issues. And I think that we need to really engage the community and stepping up to the plate and taking personal responsibility and saying, yeah, well, you know what? maybe we really don't need all that 20 jillion hotel rooms and all this real estate, all this high-end housing. Maybe we don't need that. Maybe what we need are smaller things that really address the needs of the community, more playgrounds, more things of that nature. And then I think that we have to get over the hump that I think everybody has this huge expectation of what November 20th means to Guam. And that's just November 20th. What it really means is November 20th, 2020, when people are hearing what that really looks like. And I think we need to think forward instead of concentrating on what tomorrow is, because really the impact, we won't see some of these impacts until 2020, but we have to be prepared today and understand what those impacts are, so that way our grandchildren and our children are able to go to the beach and experience and go see what our natural forest looks like and what birds look like, what a bat looks like, so that it's really truly about understanding the sacrifices we need to make for Guam in the future.
And do you think we can achieve that balance? Do you see that in the 20 years from now, that we're able to achieve that balance?
Absolutely. We're a resilient community. We've been doing it for many years. You see it after a storm, how a community can get together. The military community, the local community, the private community. I think we've done it last week in the drive for people in the region as well as American Samoa and other places where they experience disasters. That's one thing we're very good at on Guam. We're prepared for disaster, the good and the bad. And I guess the new Secretary of State, right, or the Chief of Staff, let's not make a disaster, take advantage of the disaster that's happening so it can be good. Not that this buildup is a disaster, but you know all the impacts of huge development in a short period of time.
Okay, we have one more question, and it's for you, Laura Lee. You seem to be the favored one today. Has EPA or any other GovGuam agency done research as to the maximum capacity of, I guess, vehicles that can be managed on Guam because of fuel emissions? I think what they're talking about is air quality.
Actually, if it's air emissions, it's GPA's power generators that are producing more air emissions, pollution than the vehicles. No, we have not done a study like that yet. That's something we could entertain in with this AR dollars. But we do know that we do have a program as far as like for the buses. A lot of times we get complaints of, you ever see those tourist big buses and everybody's saying, it's just huge black smoke coming out. And just last year we pulled off the road about 157 buses. And bottom line is, it's really, we use a more polluted type of diesel. And there is a move, and I hope there is a move to bring in low sulfur diesel. But the buses, that basically, even though we pull them in and we tell them they have what they need to do, it's always maintenance again. They can address and lower their pollution, their air emission coming out to much cleaner just by maintenance, but then 6 months later, if they don't do maintenance, it's back again. We would see them 6 months later. Sadly to say, the fine is very tiny. It's $50. They actually write a check. They don't even bother. They just write a check and say, here. And then they said, and there's a grace period to correct the measure. And so that's something maybe if we made it $1,000 when we pull a bus, then, they would actually upkeep their maintenance on the buses.
Okay, well, thank you very much, panel members. Thank you very much, audience, for being here today. And most especially, a big thank you and Donklin Sejus Masi to Senator Guthers, Senator Respicio, and the members of the 30th Guam Legislature for hosting us this afternoon. And we'll see you all tomorrow. In the meantime, we do have a special guest coming up. Thank you once again. It's been my pleasure to moderate this portion of it, and I'm going to be back tomorrow morning, so more fun.
And I'd like to start out by thanking all of you who've been coming to the conference. Many of you stayed all day. Some of you have come in and out at different times. But we welcome all of you, and of course we look forward to returning tomorrow. Today's conference proceedings was very, very interesting. As you know, we started off with a really reassuring presentation by our keynote speaker, the acting assistant Secretary of the Navy for Installations and Environment, Roger Natsuhara. He said something that I think we should all remember and feel good about. He said that it is the goal of the Department of the Navy, and hence the Department of Defense, and hence the Obama administration, to have one Guam when it comes to this buildup. One Guam. And that's been the message that the civilian government of Guam, inclusive of the governor's office, his instrumentalities that report to him, the members of the legislature, the courts, and all the key entities within our island community have been saying, we don't want two Guams. One Guam on the base and another type of Guam off the base. The vision that we have been promoting through the Committee on the Guam Military Buildup has been one island, one people, one quality of life for everyone when it comes to the military buildup. So the remarks of our special guest speaker, Assistant Secretary Natsuhara for One Guam, was welcome. This was the first time we've heard this from any federal official, and it was stated here this morning at our conference. We also heard today from our first panel group on the family in the community. What will happen to families in the community on Guam? It was moderated by Dr. Ron McNinch, and the participants in the panel, who each gave very, very well thought out presentations, included Lulian Guerrero, who's a member of the Board of Trustees of the Guam Memorial Hospital, Mrs. Cirilla Rapadas from Catholic Social Services, the U.S. Attorney Leonard Rapadas, Speaker Derek Hills of the Guam Youth Congress, and Dr. Mary Okada, the president of our Guam Community College. Each of them presented perspectives on areas that certainly will become a focal point of the Guam military buildup, ranging from our health service capacity to meet the needs of an increasing population that will come with the buildup, to the needs of the disadvantaged that exist on Guam today and which may likely increase in the future with the buildup. We heard from our U.S. Attorney on certain areas of public safety that his office focuses on, and which may become issues in the buildup as well, that we need to work on and develop mitigation approaches to. And we heard from our youth speaker of the Guam Youth Congress, who told us about the visions of our youth, particularly with reference to the buildup. They have high expectations from this buildup, and they want to be part of the buildup and contribute to a one Guam approach so that the buildup is good for everyone who calls Guam home. Dr. Mary Okada, our Guam Community College president, gave us a rundown on some of the initiatives that her institution has been taking to prepare for the buildup and beyond the buildup. Excuse me. We had a special guest presentation, and we're very honored. We'd like to recognize again the president of the Federated States of Micronesia, Emmanuel Mori, who's been here all day. He gave a presentation this afternoon after lunch, but he has stayed all day, and we're very honored, sir, that you're here and you traveled to be with us today. President Mori talked about some of the visions that he and his administration have for the people of the FSM when it comes to this buildup. And he also made a request, which is a very, very important request to us on Guam, that when we measure the impact of our friends and our brothers and sisters from the Micronesia region who come to Guam, let us also measure their impact in terms of what they contribute to Guam because of their manpower abilities and because of the contributions they make to our tax base. And that's a very reasonable and fair request, Mr. President, and I'm sure we are listening here, and that that will be one of the projects that will be focused on by our own Bureau of Planning and Statistics, as was discussed later today. We also have had a panel this afternoon, our second panel, on natural resources. This is a big focal point of interest among the people of Guam. As you know, Guam, similar to some of our other sister and brother Pacific Island groups, is very proud of its land, of its ocean, of its warmth, sun, of its tropical identity. And of course, we're very, very proud of the unique beauty of our people, our indigenous culture, the Chamorro culture, and the other cultures that contribute to make Guam what it is and gives it such a special identity. No one on the island wants to see that lost, to see that diminished in any way. Our environment, our natural resources, which includes our people and the culture of Guam. And that was the focal point of the panel that was presented before us this afternoon. That was well moderated by our friend Clifford Guzman, and we thank him for his leadership and his time as our moderator. Participating in the panel was our director of the Guam Environmental Protection Agency, Laura Lee Crisostomo. We had Chris Duenas, our director of land management, Bernard Watson from the Farmers Cooperative, and we had the representative from the Natural Resources Committee of the Civilian Military Task Force, representing Director Tony Lamarena, was Vanji Lujan, who gave a very good presentation on what the Natural Resources Committee of the Civilian Military Task Force has been doing to help prepare for the military buildup and also help on other concerns of the community regarding our natural resources. Laurie talked about the Environmental Protection Agency and the need for regulatory enforcement. Chris Duane has talked about our land and how finite our land resources are and how that is going to be a special focus of attention, particularly when we start to read the environmental impact statement, which will be officially released to us on Guam on Saturday. Land is a very cherished commodity here. It's part of the culture, it's part of the family traditions to respect the land and to retain the land. And all of us are looking forward to finding out exactly what is planned for the build-up military footprint when it comes to land and the potential need for more land for the build-up. Bernard Watson gave a very eloquent overview of the activities of the farmers on Guam and their agricultural interests and what they need to expand their work. And he made some very worthwhile recommendations, including the possibility of trying to encourage more young people to go into agriculture and to recognize their interest in agriculture by identifying land that they could use to farm so that they could make it their life's work and hopefully be able to make a living at it. He emphasized that being a farmer, working in agriculture is very difficult, and it's not easy to make it financially viable. But regardless, there are many people on Guam that are committed to the land, as were their ancestors, and who work the land, and who want to be partners in this buildup and to provide more agricultural produce on Guam to meet the needs of our community so that we are not dependent on imports and we can reduce our dependence on imports. And of course, we will look forward to our military community to support this goal and this initiative. Vanji Lujan talked about some really fine work from the Natural Resources Committee of the Civilian Military Task Force to perhaps mitigate some of the anticipated impacts of the buildup, as well as private development on Guam that will result from the impact of the buildup. We all know, ladies and gentlemen, from all the discussions today, that the government of Guam, on its part, needs to enhance its regulatory capability. We need to train more of our government personnel so that they can better regulate and enforce existing laws and regulations that will impact Guam in many ways in terms of how the island changes and how it develops because of the buildup and because of other trends that are happening in our region and in our community because of an increase in the population. This is something that our human resource managers in the government of Guam must focus upon and must arrange. And of course, we must work with our university and our community college and other educational institutions on the island to make this possible. All in all, our conference so far has been very informative. We appreciate very much the participation of all the speakers today and all the panel members and our moderators. We want to thank the School of Business and Public Administration at the university for their support, and particularly the student volunteers that are here, who've been here all day and will be here tomorrow, helping us out. I want to make a special, extend a special thank you on behalf of Senator Respicio and I to the employees of the Guam Legislature and the staff members of the various offices, particularly our offices, for their hard work and their dedication in helping to make today's event possible and tomorrow's event possible. It takes a lot of work behind the scenes to put something like this on, and they've done this so well. We're very, very proud of all of our employees here at the legislature, and we thank all of them for their work today. Guam is a wonderful place, and we've always had a very close relationship with our military friends. All of us have someone in the family that's been in the military or who currently are in the military, perhaps fighting on behalf of our nation in the Middle East and elsewhere. And this buildup is something we're intrigued by. It's something we're interested in. It's something we're a little worried about because there's a lot of questions we need to get answered. But we're slowly getting answers. This forum is one venue in which we're getting some answers. I think hearing from the Assistant Secretary this morning say very clearly his vision is one Guam for this buildup, working together, is very reassuring. When we finally see the draft EIS this weekend, many of us in the legislature will be very busy starting to read it and go through it and start to prepare our comments, as will, I'm sure, many other people in the community. And we encourage everyone on Guam to please take time to learn more about the EIS draft and to prepare your comments and participate in the forums that will be organized so you can give your comments. We appreciate our military community being represented here today. I think it's very important for you to hear some of the thinking that's going on and how some of the speakers have presented to you and others their plans and their activities in preparing for this buildup. And we hope tomorrow, which will be a very exciting day as well, to learn more about the planning for this buildup and how it may affect you and I and everyone else who calls Guam home. Tomorrow's day is going to be a busy day. We start off tomorrow with a keynote address by the Undersecretary of the Department of Labor and Employment of the Republic of the Philippines. The Honorable Romeo Lagman has traveled to Guam, especially for this conference, and he will be sharing with us his perspectives on the Philippine view of the Guam buildup. Tomorrow also, we're going to have a presentation on the survey results that were conducted over at the Guam Community College on the Guam military buildup, and it will be presented by instructor Jose Munoz of the Guam Community College. In the morning, we have panel 3 on public service and systems related to government and the buildup. And then, excuse me, in the afternoon, we're going to talk about federal territorial relations. And that's going to, I think, be a very aggressive, informative, maybe a little emotional for some folks. But we need to talk about federal-territorial relations and how it relates to the buildup and how the buildup may affect various topics under this subject, such as Chamorro self-determination, political status, and other issues. So we welcome you back tomorrow. We ask our TV audience friends to come back and join us at 8:30 tomorrow on Channel 13. Will be covered on Channel 13 on cable and also on Channel 21 on the Guam TV system. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being here today. Drive safely going home. Bye-bye.